Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this epic Alpha Pro Series event. Spawning up here in the top position of Pillars of Gold, he is BYUN. And his opponent down here in the bottom for Alpha X, he is ASTREA. Now, this event was casted live, but unfortunately, Africa TV had a couple of issues with its servers, so the first 3 games were a little bit distorted in the fact that the stream did go offline. So basically, what we are doing here is getting a full-on recast of these games so that you can see all the epic action, because this was such a fun series. So after this, we are going to be just putting this back onto the VOD, splicing it together Frankenstein style, and we are going to bring this straight to you. But anyway, to start things off, BYUN, up to his old tricks, going to be dropping that engineering bay, just kind of trying to make sure that ASTREA cannot expand for a while. He just wants to kind of slow down economically so that he can you know, kind of get his game plan down a little bit sooner. Now, on the other side of things, we should be seeing him throw down his own CC, but instead, it looks like he's going to be going for factory first. Just a little way to kind of get ahead with some aggression, as it looks like ASTREA just going to pull the old Zergy 1, 2, 3 and head to the third base and drop it down. Now, if BYUN is aggressive, that is going to be a bad position to be in, but if he can kind of hold on to that and keep it safe, then he is going to have a little bit of a better time, because that does mean that he will be able to get that safer expansion at the natural for the third. And yeah, other than that, BYUN kind of just powering up here. We'll have to see what kind of aggression is going to be coming ASTREA's way. On the other side of things, ASTREA just kind of scouting around. He might be throwing down a proxy on the other side of the map as well. He just wants, like, if BYUN is going to be aggressive with these Hellions, this is one of those builds where you can kind of punish the Terran player just a little bit with a few Stalkers, because the Stalkers do not really take that much damage from the Hellions. But the big question here is he going to be able to keep this third base safe with these Hellions? As we do see ASTREA getting ready for a very cheeky proxy right there. All right, the Hellions do get deflected for the time being. Keep in mind, BYUN has been a little bit gas-starved here, so his starport's a little bit late. He's not really able to throw down his tech structures. He wasn't able to start Stim or any of those other early Terran upgrades, just because he really couldn't afford it in terms of that gas count. But here we go. He's going to be coming in. Force fields out half of the Hellions. 2 of them do get in, but that is not enough to one-shot the probes. So now the Stalkers going to be able to get in and kind of just take them down relatively easily here. He did have to be a little bit careful, because he did get the one-shot there at the very last second, but I don't think any more probes are going to be falling, although he did get scouted out on this side of the map as well. Now, ASTREA does not have Blink with this, but he is still going to be extremely aggressive with it. Oh, but he's got to be so careful moving up that ramp. Beautiful little play right there from BYUN. Going to get a couple of those Stalkers and just really slow down this aggression as he starts to kind of build up in the backfield. He has to play it a little bit safer. Maybe just sacrifice the low ground as well, just to kind of make sure that he doesn't lose too much. He's got to wait for the siege tank. He's got to wait for the a marine count to kind of get bigger, and he's got to wait for these Widow Mines to get off the cooldown as well. Off the back of this, we do see ASTREA kind of just powering up, getting that robo facility in the back, so he's not all in with this, but this is still a little bit tricky for BYUN to deal with. There you go. The Adept's going to get in as well, start to kind of pull those SCVs away. Even if he doesn't kill a lot of them, that is a lost mining time. From all of these SCVs, BYUN, you have to send those back to work, which he eventually does. Not before having to sacrifice the natural there. He's going to have to repair that. Okay, so now BYUN, he's playing from behind very heavily in the economics. ASTREA going up for his third base as well. From here, I think BYUN might want to stay on 2 base for a little bit longer, kind of just build up the army in case ASTREA does decide to move across the map once again. But the question is, how long can he seriously afford to do so? Because remember, he's only producing on 2 racks, a factory, and a starport. That is nowhere near peak production. But here we go, ASTREA, like 2 ships passing in the middle of the day, does get full wind of this, and now he can kind of position his army to catch this and force that slow siege up. Leapfrog here, even just going to get a ton of those Marines for free. Stalker's taking some huge connections right there. Unfortunately for ASTREA, he's trying to fight in possibly the worst location to do so. Now being pushed back to his third base. He's just taking so much damage here. I think BYUN, even with this small amount of units, will be able to kind of break this location. But we'll have to see. ASTREA just has to be very patient here if he's going to kind of clean this up. Wait for the Immortals, wait for the Disruptor as well, I think would be great. But he is just going to dive right on top. Good spread, going to try and mitigate the siege tank fire. We'll get all 3 of the siege tanks in well. And honestly, that was a pretty good hold. You know, once that Immortal started to pop and tanked a lot of that damage, he was able to kind of clear that up. Not enough Marines to kind of keep the siege tanks safe. Yeah, from here we're kind of gonna see this little lull in the action as we're kind of waiting for both sides to kind of power up. With BYUN going for a little bit of a Widow Mine drop as well. Now we should be seeing that transition into Colossus as ASTREA getting that 5 gateway power up, extended thermal lance as well. We don't see them on the production tab just yet, however. So there you go. They just popped in, but here comes the Widow Mines. Is ASTREA paying attention? I think a lot of it is across the map. So 9 workers going to go down, and that is going to force ASTREA to come home here, it looks like, to clean this up. BYUN still out on the map as well, just trying to get some cheeky pickoffs on the gateway units. But overall, that was some really good damage. He's just got to follow up on it. Disruptor is going to whiff away the stim coming down. BYUN loves to siege up this position, even without the siege tanks. But unfortunately, he runs right into the army of ASTREA. The Widow Mines get taken down before they can get any damage done. And that was an overwhelming success for ASTREA because he has really stopped the pushing power of this army. We also do see a small Disruptor drop going to be heading across. Now, it looks like BYUN has kind of found that position where he wants to be aggressive. He still wants to kind of push the issue. but tries to get onto this location. ASTREA not really going to allow him to do so. We do see BYUN going to be reinforcing this army as well. The question is this an overextension by BYUN? And the reason I say that is because as time goes on, ASTREA is just really heavily powering up here. Additional Colossus on the way. He's got the Dark Shrine as well. And BYUN's really segmented with his army. He's not really put it together at all. He's trying to go for these little guerrilla warfare tactics. And it's not really doing too much for him, but getting the Warpism would be really nice. He does kill that off with the Disruptor inside. Beautiful. Alright, so for ASTREA, we do see a huge Zealot run by coming across the map, and this is the kind of move that he can really afford to make now, just dropping tons of minerals on BYUN's base with these run-bys. Now, this does mean that BYUN is going to be forced to remain at home with a small chunk of his army just to defend that. He is going to get cleaned up on this side as well, forced to retreat. And back here, he's going to just try and bait the army into the Widowmine minefield. But ASTREA really not taking the bait anymore. So the real question is ASTREA going to move out on the back of this? And it looks like he's at the very least going to try and catch this drop on the left side. And yeah, he's actually going to move out and try and get some damage done here while BYUN's not really together with his army. Oh no, the Colossus though instantly picked off here, and as ASTREA is moving in, we see the drop going to get cleaned up on that side. DT is doing some absolute work. BYUN though, segmented in his army, will get stopped. Now BYUN really going to just be forced to expend a ton of scans in order to deal with the DTs. That's going to weaken his economy quite heavily as he lost a lot of SCVs. He is equal in the SCV count, but that's not really the whole story here, as he is going to have to lift up his third. And now the SCVs on the run. This is just going worse and worse for BYUN as the time goes on. And ASTREA, once again, just going to bring his army together right on top of the SCVs. I think from here, BYUN is going to have to fight a really uphill battle. Might even just want to pull all the SCVs that he has left and go for one big attack. Just taking a look at that army supply, though. BYUN barely taking the edge there. Problem is, it's pure bio at this point. And while that can be pretty good if it was just pure gateway, there's enough splash in the back as well as disruptors coming in as well that you really do need some semblance of an additional force. We also see that DT just denying as much mining as possible on that third base. So I mean, this is pretty much death by 1,000 cuts for BYUN here. And he does think, you know what, I am going to do my best to win this game with one huge push. And by push, I mean he's going to lift up everything, which, by the way, has been spotted. ASTREA just all over the map with his vision. Now that's just going to get dived right on top of. Stalker's going to lead the charge. There are a lot of Marauders, so they are going to trade out pretty effectively versus the Stalkers. But at the same time, again, more SCVs dying in the main and natural. The engineering bay is going to go down as well. BYUN running on fumes at this point, and he is going to tap out. GG is called. We will see you guys in game number 2. And without further ado, for game number 2, ladies and gentlemen, spawning up here in the top position for Alpha X, he is our orange Protoss, ASTREA. And his opponent down here in the bottom, he is BYUN. So one of the big things we did see with BYUN in that last game, he didn't really take a ton of early damage, but he kind of did sacrifice his late game to kind of get that early game damage, and unfortunately it didn't really work out too well for him, as we did see that he got cleaned up, and once he started to lose that kind of forward momentum, he really didn't get that transition into the later stages. He had no ghosts. He didn't have any Vikings to clean up the Colossus. He didn't even really have a ton of Widow Mines, which are a good supporting unit because that allows you to kind of bait the army backwards into a retreat, which is the best way to kind of play it out with that. But right now, he is going to play it a little bit tricky here, as the Rax is going to be down by the third base. This is pretty much just to kind of make ASTREA freak out a bit, as you know, he does have a lot of gas being banked up back at home, so he does want to get that factory down nice and early as well. It looks like ASTREA is going to block that factory, though, for just a little bit. And so now, just with this Reaper coming in, ASTREA is going to feel a little bit safer. He knows that the Reaper can't really get here from across the map that quickly. So that pretty much just tells him that, yeah, this is just another tricky Terran play. But, you know, the thing is, off the back of this, BYUN will have great Marine production starting off, and he will be able to get his starport down as soon as that factory finishes. So he's going to be able to push, and he's going to be able to push quite aggressively as well. Once all is said and done, he might be going for a pretty big 2-base timing here against ASTREA. Oh man, that was actually a really quick cancel on the CC there. I'm kind of interested about that because I guess he didn't feel as safe. The Adept did get in, got a little bit of damage as well. But yeah, that's going to put BYUN a little bit further behind. I don't think he necessarily needed to cancel it at that point. Alright, so BYUN does get in. He saw the Twilight Council. I know he would love to get in there and see that it is going to be a blink timing. Basically, ASTREA, I believe, it has a pretty good chance on this map because you do have a couple of locations where you can kind of blink in. He just needs to do so before there's too much splash in siege tanks, which, by the way, BYUN has pumped out quite a bit earlier than the last game. He's not really going for anything too crazy to start things off, so he can afford to kind of get those safe siege tanks. Alright, so Raven coming on down. He's going to be able to snipe the Observer. ASTREA has started the move out. And here we go. We already do have one siege tank. I gotta say, I'm not a fan of this position really well. It does cover quite a bit stretch of area, but if you can get in there with the Stalkers, you can blink right on top of that. BYUN doing a good job of kind of just mitigating that by getting rid of the observer very quickly here. I don't know why he scanned. He actually does have a Raven. Yeah, now it's going to be very difficult for ASTREA to kind of move in. We do see he's just going to try and go around the siege tanks, however. There are 3 of them, so that's going to be a really tall order. So he's just going to get out of there. And from here, I think he should just go for a bit of a soft contain. Try and get those pickoffs if BYUN tries to move out and get any sort of map presence. Yeah, here we go. He is just going to kind of hang out here in the front of the base. All right. So as this soft contain is coming in, he's also going to be trying to get a little bit of damage done with the War Prism. BYUN already does have his 3rd base up a lot quicker than in game number 1 as well. So that's going to help him out, but we do see that kind of transition into Colossus. Taking a look at that army count, while BYUN does have a better army at this point, as time goes on, that's going to really swing in ASTREA's favor with these transitions, with these AoE units coming on in. So, obviously we do have a big question for BYUN. When is his move out going to come? Looks like we have answered that question. He's going to kind of rotate around to the 3rd base, try and defend it against this Stalker push. But after that, I think it would be prudent to kind of move in. Terran on 3 bases is known as the War Machine Terran. And really the best time to move in is when you have that 3rd base heading on down, because it's just so much easier to defend if you put on the pressure. We did see some huge connections right there off of the siege tanks, so that's going to make it an even bigger window for BYUN to kind of push out. Gotta say though, if he does play this defensively, I'm a little bit worried about it. All right, so from here on out, it's kind of just build up, build up, build up. ASTREA just exhuming his map presence with these observers. Anytime that BYUN moves out, he is going to see it, like right there. Yeah, from here, he's got his 4th base up. He's getting a ton of disruptors, which on submarine is a pretty big deal, because that does mean that he's going to be able to really kind of drive the issue home. Now, that is a bit of a double-edged spear, because at the same time, we do have a ton of siege tanks. So it's going to be that little bit of a little bit of a tricky thing to make work. All right, BYUN, though, going to be going for the slow leapfrog forward. And here we go. We do see the first bit of Zealots going to be popping on in. The reinforcements are going to get a little bit cleaned up here. That is going to slow down any sort of push. The scan going to be going down. Disruptor going to be able to push BYUN away from the Raven as well. Some good force fields going to prevent the forward momentum. He wants to push the issue, but he's just having trouble getting across here. Once again, taking some huge pot shots. As we do see, DT is going to be coming in, completely blindsiding BYUN. And my goodness, like this push still coming across the map, but I just don't know. Yeah, so BYUN kind of decides that he can't really push the issue any further. He is going to back up and start the leapfrog over again with the reinforcements. I think that just buys ASTREA way too much time. If he would have kept the push going, he would have been able to at least trade semi-efficiently here. And the fact that ASTREA did leave all of his disruptors completely on their own as he kind of moved to rotated around. But here we go. BYUN decides, I am going to go for the base trade right now. Disruptor's not really going to get too much done as the SCVs going to be forced away from the third. 38 of them going down so far as the first Nexus finally falls for ASTREA. Right now, BYUN has enough minerals to throw down one additional CC if he so chooses, but the reinforcements are actually going to clean up quite a bit of ASTREA's army. On the other side, we don't have enough energy for a scan, however, so the DTs are going to force the issue and push ASTREA into the main base. So now production is compromised for BYUN. Now keep in mind, at any time, ASTREA can actually come on home with that recall. So far, electing not to do so. We do see that he does have a Templar Archives as well, so Archons might be a good way to get some additional splash damage on this army. As we do see, he's throwing down a couple of additional Nexus for these probes. The problem with all of this, though, is ASTREA is still mining and how. Taking a look at that income advantage. As time goes on, these DCs will be able to kind of whittle this down. And the recall coming on in with the disruptors, cleaning up as much of that drop as humanly possible. BYUN dropping in supply, 35, 29, 24, and that is going to be it. ASTREA with a wonky NA style rough 'em up takes game number 2, and we're going to be heading into game number 3. Take it away. It might be a best of 9, but this guy has secured himself a very early lead in this series, spawning up here in the top position. He is ASTREA. And his opponent down here in the bottom. He might be down, but he's certainly not out. He is BYUN. So Oxide, I think, really is one of the maps where BYUN is going to be able to kind of make his move. The third bases are a little bit spaced out. We do have this one location where you can kind of split the army in half as well. A lot of locations where BYUN can kind of get those good engagements that he needs to come back into it. And I think that's really going to play to his style a little bit more. He's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe hit ASTREA a bit quicker, because he's really just given ASTREA the time to kind of build up and expand, and really not getting that early game damage that you kind of get used to with BYUN playing. Once again as well, just going to skip the Reaper. That's pretty common these days. The Reaper, a good tool for that early game scouting, but at the same time, it's really hard to kind of micromanage it while also trying to build up that really quick economy because of the fact that the Protoss players really going to hide their stuff a little bit better. So the Reaper's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive, and with a couple of Stalkers out, you're really not going to see too much. So that's almost 50 gas down the drain. I think that's kind of the way that Terran players have been looking at it. But yeah, for right now, BYUN is just going to be powering up. He's getting that Hellion as well as the additional Marine, so he's going to be pretty safe versus early game pressure. We'll have to see when he does decide to start Siege Tank production, because we do have Twilight Council for ASTREA. Now, there are two different ways that he can go with this. ASTREA is one of those players who can cheese, and he's relatively good at it. And we obviously have seen his DTs do massive amounts of work in the mid-game, so that would help out. But instead, it is just going to be that a pretty standard blink. Hellion as well, just a little bit of scouting information. He's going to see that the third base is trying to be taken, wants to kill off the probe once again, delay that. No dice, however. And ASTREA will be able to go up to his third base as we see the first bit of harassment come out of BYUN. I feel like the problem with this is that ASTREA is set up to defend relatively well. We do see that Widow Mine just going for a stroll. That is pretty funny. But here we go. BYUN just drops right on top of the ramp. The Stalkers do catch wind of it, so they will try and just whittle this down. You have to be careful not to lose too many of those Stalkers, but already forcing BYUN on the lift up, so no real damage done. Not really worth the investment right there. We also do see still hanging out. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that guy, see if he can really get anything done. Now, this move I'm a little bit worried about. He's going for double forge very early. Got a probe. But the double forge early on, I don't know if that's going to be the best option here. I feel like kind of sticking with the Robo Bay behind this, as well as kind of getting the gateways first, will do a lot better for him. If you focus too heavily on those upgrades, you're just going to get overwhelmed by BYUN. And speaking of getting overwhelmed here, BYUN still has not thrown down his third base. So there is a pretty good chance that he's going to be going for a very big push, and the army coming across the map confirms that. Near this third base, there are a couple of beautiful locations to drop your siege tanks. So it's going to be a little bit of a dicey position here for ASTREA for just a little bit of time. Very aggressive with those siege tanks coming on forward. So the first one will get plucked out. Shield battery is popped. A couple of additional probes going to get killed off in the back by the Raven. And it looks like after a dicey position, ASTREA actually does hold relatively easily. Now, the problem with that is ASTREA is just on mostly gateway units at this time. He doesn't have too much support. Yeah, he's got this one Immortal, essentially. And that's pretty much the only thing he has. Gateway style can be very powerful early on. It can be kind of tricky to deal with as a Terran player, but as time goes on, as that Marauder count grows, the Marine DPS expands, and the upgrades start to kick in, you need something in the back to kind of center this army. And ASTREA doesn't really have that right now. BYUN certainly doesn't want to give him the time to build up either. Trying to get the Observer so that these Widow Mines will be a little bit safer. But one thing I do like about this is BYUN has expanded that Widow Mine count quite significantly from the previous couple of games. And that's kind of one of the things that's been keeping him back, is just not having that splash to deal with the Zealots in the front and having a way to retreat into. But unfortunately for ASTREA, he does get divided here off his army. And the Widow Mines going to get some beautiful connections on those Zealots, keeping down a lot of this. And now the Stalkers completely under threat. Another big warp-in is going to be enough to force this back. But still, ASTREA having to dump a ton of minerals into those Zealots, that's going to be a little bit less for him to kind of power up in other ways. All right. So from here, he's got his fourth base. If he can just hold on, BYUN is not really doing too much in the tech field right now. He's just pure bio. The Zealots in the front. Although there is a force field, BYUN will get out of there with a good majority of his units. And he's going to just continue to fight. The Zealot count not really that high anymore. And the third base completely under threat as the Widow Mines cleaning up a little bit more of ASTREA's army. And now, it's really just this little death by 1,000 cuts situation for BYUN. He's starting to reach that snowball effect with his army, as the reinforcements just going to be parade pushing across the map from now on. This is where it gets scary for ASTREA. The fact that he has no Colossus, no Disruptors, no real comeback mechanic here is going to really come back to bite him in the tuchus. The only real thing he has going to have going for him is those +2 upgrades. But BYUN finding a beautiful location on the natural ramp. We do see a Zealot run by going to get a little bit of damage done. But at the end of the day, the Immortals fall. The Marauders just raining hellfire in the back. Even this next warp-in of Zealots, I don't think is going to be truly enough, as that will get cleaned up quite handily by the Widow Mines. And I think BYUN has pushed his way forward and has broken ASTREA in this game. Yeah, the Zealots cleaned up. The Immortals have fallen again. 11 workers going down, and the Zealots not really going to be in any huge numbers to deal with this. As ASTREA drops below 100 supply, he's just divided. His entire army is segmented to a point where it's just undefendable. Finding a good location to make sure that the Zealots don't get much room as well. We see those probes crashing on down. And with those dead, it may look like BYUN's on the retreat, but that is nowhere near factual. GG is called. So now we are going to be bringing you back to the live VOD for this event. Take it away, Live Passer. All right. So this guy has started to turn his luck around after a solid game number 3. It's time for the BYUN Express. And for his opponent down here, he has been a brick wall in the games that he's won. But let's see if he can keep it up. He is ASTREA House. All right. So the probe is going to be moving out across the map. That is a bit of an early positioning here, so you know what that means. We're going to have some sort of proxy coming BYUN's way. And from the positioning, I'd have to assume that this is going to more than likely be Stargate. Potentially an additional gateway, though. All right, so it's a Max Packs build. Basically, what if you guys don't know, Max Packs build is essentially you get a second gateway proxied about halfway across the map, and then you kind of just try and force your opponent into a very defensive position by bringing out a Zealot, a couple of Adepts, maybe a Stalker or two to kind of just keep things rolling. Yeah, the probe going to be coming in here. Just trying to get a little bit of a scout. Now, what BYUN is going for, that faster reactor, I think that actually is a pretty good counter to this. Even if he does decide to go Hellions, ASTREA is going for Adepts. And while Adepts are pretty tanky, they can take a lot of Hellion fire, they still do start to fall eventually. And you can just kind of chase them down. Yes, it is. Size matters. How you doing? All right, so the Adept is going to get a scout on this. He knows that it's Hellions now. So that does mean he knows that he's got to be a little bit more careful. And ASTREA. I don't know how long ASTREA has been playing StarCraft 2, but someone should tell him that buildings are supposed to go in your main base, or just any of your bases. The Adept's going to get a little bit of damage done to the Hellions. We don't see a wall in the main, so this is a very risky position for ASTREA right now. If BYUN can keep a good majority of these Hellions alive, then he's going to be able to kind of jump into ASTREA's base pretty undefended here. Not even a shield battery to get that going. But now alarm bells have got to be ringing in BYUN's head. He knows that you don't have this many Adepts unless you're going for some sort of cheeky shenanigan. And unfortunately for ASTREA, this does get scouted out by the Widowmine drop. We do have a couple of Widowmines just holding down the fort. So yeah, we'll have to see if BYUN can hold on with what little he has. First Widowmine not going to get its shot off. He does have an armory, so that is going to stay undetected for a while. A couple of Widowmines getting some nice shots, but this is the big story right here. SCVs are already pulled, and we do have a Viking to shut this down. But the Stalkers are going to be able to get on top of that. Looks like the Widowmine actually did a lot more damage to the to the SCVs than you would have kind of liked. And unfortunately, ASTREA going to lose the rest of his workers right there. I think if he doesn't win the game right here, right now, he is going to have to GG. And it's looking like that might be the case. So ASTREA going for a very crazy build. Not really going to work out too well for him. As the Warp Prism falls, so do ASTREA's hopes. So after a very solid couple of games to start things off, BYUN really just saying, you know what? Play me straight up or don't play me at all, because I will beat your craziness any day of the week. So we kind of gauge ASTREA's skill here. Don't go full NA, ladies and gentlemen. It may seem fun, and it is pretty fun, but when there's money on the line, go full KR. I've had this poster. That's the Wings of Liberty poster from back in the day. I kind of just keep it on the floor right now because it keeps falling off the wall. But yeah, we're going to be hopping into game number 5, ladies and gentlemen. Tied up score. Everything still left to play for. We've got 3 maps left before the map reset. So anything can happen. I try and be subtle with my sponsor plugs. But you know what? I don't try and be subtle. These amazing games. So introducing down here in the bottom position for the Dragon, he is Alpha X's ASTREA. And his opponent up here in the top with a commanding 2-game streak. He is BYUN. And all right, so far so good. All the buildings are where they're supposed to be. I don't think ASTREA is going to subscribe to the ideology that third time is the charm. I think this time he kind of just goes back to what's worked for him and tries to play it a little bit more straight up. We do see BYUN going to be going for the engineering bay block, though. Going to try and slow down ASTREA, but already it's going to take a lot of damage on that SCV, so that's not going to be the longest of delays there. You know, it is still a little bit of a nuisance. It does kind of force you to keep a couple of workers off the line. But there you go. He's got his natural started up. BYUN, though, is going to be going for what looks to be Hellions once again. And, you know, I dig it. Hellions have been popular in the past couple of months for Terran players versus Protoss because there is the potential for huge amounts of damage. I don't know if you guys were watching some of our show matches that we were doing a few months ago, but we would see players just go in with the Hellions to an undefended mineral line, and it smelt like burnt mechanical fluid from all the dead probes. BYUN, though, a slight mistake here. Gets a ply block. That is a very inopportune time. That's a stroke, I believe. Potentially. Yeah, no, I think a stroke is burnt toast. So if a probe smells like toast, first of all, we got to get that written to the lore because that is the best piece of lore that there could ever be. And second, see a doctor if your Hellions smell like burnt toast. Now, BYUN, though, is not going to go overboard with the Hellions this time, as we do see ASTREA going to be mixing it up, going straight for the Phoenix play. This will keep him a little bit more safe from the Widowmine follow-up. And it's just really good for kind of picking off medevacs moving across the map. If you're going up against an aggressive Terran like BYUN, it's good to kind of just, you know, have them in position. And as well, we've seen ASTREA be very good at the backstab. So the Phoenix are a really good way to do that as well, just to get those extra SCV kills coming on in. Right, so BYUN kind of playing it a little bit safer. He's got the additional Cyclone coming in to try and snipe a couple of these Phoenix if he can. The Hellions finally do find an opening. The Adepts went a little bit too far out, but they will get lifted here. Maybe get one shot off. Unfortunately, in range of the shield battery. So they will get cleaned up. And already, ASTREA playing a perfect game 5 minutes in. And as I say that, the probe dies. So perfect game over. So BYUN, this game does have the faster third CC, so he's not going to fall behind economically. Might even get a Phoenix snipe here. That would be pretty nice, because at this stage, you really don't want to be remaking those Phoenix. Instead, you want to spend the gas with the transition into Colossus, into Disruptors, the Warp Prism as well. BYUN sees it. He just doesn't have a scan for it. Yeah, here we go. A small Widowmine drop. Not going to get too much done. Trying to fake that he's going for the third base. Trying to force the Phoenix to come on home. But that does leave your medevac in a very inopportune position. I'm a little bit worried here that BYUN making these small mistakes is going to start to cost him the series. See, he was waiting for the Widowmines to get off cooldown so he could just drop them right where they sat. But that left him so wide open that now he's going to have to remake the medevac. He's not going to have that potential for the harassment either. I just don't know. It's these small mistakes that I'm worried about. Now he does have his third base up, which is good. If we take a look at that income graph, you can kind of see where the mules are starting to drop. Get him up there. Army size, relatively equal. We haven't really seen any sort of engagement just yet. Yeah, nothing too much else to say. We're kind of in that lull of the game, the power-up phase, where we just see the additional gateways being dropped down. A ton of Templar Archives, Colossus, +1, charge, Hail Mary. Insert weird sounding name, but probably a Protoss upgrade in some other life. But yeah, BYUN, I do think he might be going for a little bit of a poke right here. And by a little bit of a poke, I mean he's going to go for a very committed, aggressive attack. Pulling his entire army out. I don't think he's even leaving anything at home. Now, this did get scouted by that observer. He actually, I think, prodded it into his army. But I like this. He's going to force the Phoenix to be in the wrong location so that he can set up a much more committed, dedicated position with this main force. Keep in mind as well, he does have the armory, so those Widow Mines will get more than one shot off. The Phoenix do come back for defense, and a lot of these Zealots have been brought back to help. But now BYUN, he's not moving in. The natural is completely wide open here, and he just really wasn't able to take advantage of it. SCV, you're not a fighting unit. ASTREA, though, is pretty supply blocked right now. He's forced to make 5 additional pylons. The Colossus are going to be nice to help with this primarily Marine army. But now BYUN just finds this nice little location where he can poke and prod the Cybernetics core. That's one of the problems with making a wall with your important tech structures. There's not going to be any additional stalkers with this. With all the reinforcements, unfortunately, just walking to their death as well. Back here, we do see that patented Zealot run-by that has been keeping ASTREA in these games, but BYUN completely almost maxed out right now. 124 to 107 army supply, and that supply is starting to plummet for both sides. The Zealots tanking a lot of that Widow Mine fire. Still has plenty of them in the front to block for the Colossus and the Archons. So now BYUN, oh my goodness. Don't put that one in front. So BYUN took a bit of a blow here, but he still has the position set up. The minefield is still in play. And already it's getting some work done. The Zealot count dropping right there. The Colossus and the Archon a little bit out of position. BYUN setting up for the double prong attack once again. And yeah, from this point, BYUN has found the momentum that he needs. He just has to be careful not to lose too much of it, especially since he's divided his army so heavily. All right, so just trying to kind of pull the main army away from the force so that he can hit it. The Zealots doing what they can. The Archons, though, nothing to buffer for them. Yeah, here we go. He's going straight for the main base. The Phoenix completely out of position, and the Zealots wrong spot as well. It's pretty much ring around the death ball at this time. Even going to force a recall of a couple of Zealots back at home, but they find a beautiful location to engage into with no, absolutely no surface area at all. Phoenix going to block the escape route, so BYUN just decides to get as much damage done as possible. I don't like this move. I don't think that this is going to be the right move here, picking up your entire army and walking it into Archons. Call me a skeptic, but you know, he is GM, so he probably knows a little bit more than me. Yes, size matters. ASTREA tried to cheese, but unfortunately, a lot of Koreans are lactose intolerant. As we do see BYUN going to take a small engagement right here. The Widow Mines did get some good connections, but he is forced back. The Zealots, though, don't really have anything to back them up except for the Disruptors. And they're not really going to be able to get that much shots off. ASTREA, I think, overshot there quite a bit. But we do see, here we go. BYUN going to be in multiple locations at once. He has figured out that ASTREA can't be in all places at once. The pros doing what they can to kind of stay alive here, but not really working too well for them. We do see a big Doom Drop going to go for the natural, and ASTREA has just said, I am going to try and kill you on the other side of the map as he cleans up the main. So we are in almost a base race situation here. BYUN does have a lot back at home to kind of help him slow things down, and he is going to send a good chunk of his army back as well. But still, just getting a lot of work done on the other side while all this is happening. Looks like the CCs will get canceled here. But BYUN just biding his time, gets a beautiful EMP, the Archons. So 1 shot, 1 kill. As 26 workers have gone down. The Colossus starting to falter. Don't really want to fight down the ramp. Just make a concave at the top. And yeah, ASTREA has been pushed completely back. Taking a look at that worker supply, 35 to 64. And the production tab tells pretty much the rest of the story. He has lost almost everything. All right, the final Colossus has fallen, so he's going to have to rely on the disruptors to keep this moving. BYUN just wants to hold his 5th base for as long as possible. First couple of disruptor shots going to raise the army here. I think they hit more Zealots than they actually hit Bio. And he has shot his shot, and now BYUN going to be moving across the map with over double the army supply and double the supply in total. And yeah, I think he's just looking to close out the game right here, right now. Yeah, there you go. The first big hit. GG is called, and BYUN jumps ahead in the series 3-2. I gotta say, I'm really liking the pace of this series. We have had some relatively short games to start things off, but throwing in a pretty nice, even-sized game, really good way to go. So now it is ASTREA's choice once again. He has Romance and Jagannatha left. All right, so we are going to be going into Romanticide. For map number 6. Now we do have a I think 3-2. So we do have a confirmed game number 8. That's exciting. I'm gonna bring Mist Adept to Romanticide on February 14th. Well, good for you. Just be careful. Adepts are a wily bunch. You know, they're always kind of shading around, so if an embarrassing situation happens, you're going to be like, oh, no, I'm just here with, where'd you go? But you know what? We also have a wily bunch of players in this game, so let's introduce them, shall we? Spawning. Down here in the bottom position, he may be teamless, but he's also fearless. Bringing it on for BYUN. And his opponent up here in the top position, he is ASTREA for Alpha X. All right. So now ASTREA is going to play it a little bit safer. Just going to go for semi-little baby scout. Just trying to make sure that there's no hidden racks right next to his base. But BYUN is going to be going a little bit crazy here in terms of that tech choice. The double reactor refinery does mean we are going to see that faster factory. We might see him push out roughly the 5 to 6 minute mark. I believe that's a pretty good timing for it. But yeah, this is a really solid opening here from BYUN. If he can kind of keep it unscouted, I think ASTREA might have a lot of trouble and get blindsided by it completely. All right. Okay, it is going to be Hellions once again. And as you can see, BYUN did pull off a couple of workers from the gas. Maybe DT or maybe Widow Mines as well. But behind this, once again, ASTREA is mixing it up. This is kind of more the ASTREA style that I know. The ASTREA that I've seen before, he does love to go for Phoenix because it's just a very safe opening for a Protoss player. The Graviton beams, very good for kind of keeping those Hellions away, as we saw in the previous game. You also have the ability to kind of shut down the drops, and it looks like we might be going into Widow Mines off the back of this, which indeed we are. So that's another big, just another big plus for early game Phoenix. You can lift up the Widow Mines as well, which is just really nice. But here we go. The Hellions are going to be moving across the map. Just going to dive right in, it looks like. Get straight on top of the Adepts. Now, one Adept does fall, a lift up, trying to prevent the Hellions from getting enough damage done. But the second one will go down. He doesn't have enough to one-shot the probes anymore, but he will get a full-on scout with this. And I mean, this is not the best trade, but the information that he's gotten is pretty important as well. ASTREA, are you paying attention? He is indeed. So the Widow Mines will burrow. The Phoenix not going to lift up there. The armory is complete, so this is, I believe, a dream build. And right now, it's not really getting a ton of stuff done, but it's just very annoying to deal with. Oh, the Observer gets out of the way at the very last second there, so he will be able to continue detecting these Widow Mines who do get cleaned up. Now, BYUN is just going to be continuously dropping these Widow Mines now. He has to stay aggressive with them and hope that ASTREA is not paying attention. Which, by the way, so far, he's done a pretty good job of making sure that no harm is coming his way. All right. So now, remember, this is a pretty gas-intensive build. You're consistently remaking the Widow Mines, consistently remaking the Medivacs as well. So you do need to get those extra refineries up to kind of sustain yourself here. But it looks like he is going to get caught out in the middle of the map by that Observer once again. So good little pickoffs here, and the Phoenix really worth their weight in gold in this situation. All right, ASTREA. He's not paying attention this time. A really late pull. Just barely gets away, so he does mitigate a lot of that damage, but that could have been a very scary situation. The only thing worse than a no pull is a super late pull. Just look at this. I like this build because it's very entertaining to kind of watch the whack-a-mole. But at the same time, I always worry when the Terran player does it. Because this is money that could be put into a very aggressive attack here. Even just taking a look at the units. 4 Widowmines and these 3 Marines. So if ASTREA counterattacked at any time, BYUN would just be steamrolled here by ASTREA. So now BYUN. He's just now going to be taking his 3rd base. ASTREA's had his for quite a bit of time. Just taking a look at that income advantage squarely in ASTREA's favor, as well as that army size. You can see when the Widowmines got cleaned up there. And now BYUN only just now kind of going up to that 4th and 5th racks. So just a bit of a slower transition for him. ASTREA is paying attention, don't worry. He knows the drill. Unfortunately, these Widowmines don't, so they don't really burrow fast enough. But yeah, now we just see that gateway explosion, the +1 upgrades, charge on the way, and this is really where ASTREA can kind of just jump around on the map and tell BYUN, you tried to kill me, but you only made me stronger. And makes him extremely strong to even catch the the medevac now. All right, trying to get the connections again and again, but ASTREA just, I gotta say, I'm loving ASTREA's Widowmine defense this game, because a lot of the time you would see Protoss kind of start to let their guard down a little bit after the first couple of drops, just because they're trying to focus a little bit too heavily on the explosion here, but BYUN gonna get caught out once again by ASTREA's army. Plenty of zealots with charge to kind of keep the main tier of the bio away from the Colossus. And that's pretty much their primary focus. Yeah, from here, BYUN just keeping a few units at home. He might lose the 4th base, but he is determined to hold the high ground. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to help him out that much here, as we are in a slight base race situation, not a full-on one just yet. But as the SCVs start to fall, BYUN just kind of sacrificing the locations as he gets to them. He does need to kind of focus down the Nexus. I think that's going to be pretty important here, just so that ASTREA can't do a recall. But we are now in a full-on base race situation. Cleaning up a lot of the pylons. That's a very good start for him here. ASTREA, though, is still mining off that 1 base. Currently 13 to 16 workers, and I don't think any of these SCVs actually tried to escape. He needs to keep at least one of those alive, as well as the orbital, because he doesn't have the money to build the new one. And that's going to pretty much be it here for BYUN. He does still have this small force, but again, ASTREA still mining. Still has a couple of workers just hanging out by the 4th base, I believe. Where are some of those workers? It doesn't even matter. ASTREA tying up the series once again. We go into Jagannatha now to keep this hype train rolling. It started out looking like a stomp, and then it started out looking like a stomp for the other guy. And now we're in an equal series. Fantastic. Gigi. All right, let's get you. Put where you need to be. Just waiting on BYUN now. He might need a second after a game like that. I think that's kind of a very not so much frustrating game because you did see he was very decisive in it. He did decide to go for that for the base trade situation with only half of his army. He did have a little trouble getting the SCVs out. I think he would have liked to save one of those orbital commands and one of those SCVs at the very least. I just need to stop talking there in the transition screen then. I didn't know it was getting ducky. All right, so this is the Match Reno page. Basically, this is the Alpha Pro Series 230. This is the addition that you guys have added to the prize pool. That is on top of what we've already added on. So what you just do is you hit contribute here, and you use that code APS230. That does mean we have a couple of additional codes left. And then you just sign in. You can use your Twitch page. That's the one I use. I can't do it on stream at the moment, but yeah. So that's the way to add money to the prize pool, and that bought us just the right amount of time. So without further ado, spawning in the bottom position of Jagannatha, he is ASTREA. And his opponent up here in the top, he is BYUN. I have absolutely no words for this. None whatsoever. So ASTREA is going to go for that scout. That is going to kind of reveal everything that's going on. Yeah, no worries, underdog. But now this has kind of got him somewhat ringing alarm bells. A lot of the time, though, when you see this from a Terran player, you kind of don't overreact these days because you're like, oh, he's just hiding his barracks somewhere nearby. And, oh my goodness, misses it by just a millimeter there. The SCV revealing it. That is a little unfortunate. If he would have kept the SCV back, that would have gone undetected for a long time. But yeah, now ASTREA does know that this is coming. He's going to force out a Zealot to kind of keep himself a little bit safer. The Reaper playing with fire here as well, trying to get those probe kills. Diving right on top. Wants to fight around the cliff, however, because he wants to get into that bunker as soon as things start to get dicey. This isn't a killing blow, but this is a super annoying thing to deal with, especially when you add in the additional Marines. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be seeing this on ladder for the next couple of weeks. Granted, most of it's going to be me, so it's going to be pretty easy to defend, but, you know. Alright, so ASTREA kind of just waiting for that shield battery to go in here. Once he gets that, he can kind of pull back and defend a lot easier, although BYUN with some beautiful focus fire there. Going to get that Stalker kill. The Zealot is going to fall as well, so this is already doing way more than you would really expect it to. And now the shield battery being forced to be overcharged here. SCV finally dying, but now he can kind of just shut this down anytime he wants, salvage the bunker, and go home. Looks like he's just going to kind of let it die. And he's not done, by the way. With the crazy shenanigans, he is going for magnetic boost thingy. Oh, don't worry. BYUN is still eBay blocking his heart out. Like, he did it in this series in, like, game number 1. He just doesn't do it on these longer maps, I feel. But now he's just being very annoying for ASTREA right now. This isn't really life-threatening. It's just a hassle overall for ASTREA right now. As long as he can keep the high ground as well, he's just going to cancel the lock-on, make sure that he doesn't lose this first couple of Cyclones. Not going to get killed. My goodness. BYUN is just a micro genius. Just these small things where you think that he really wasn't supposed to win them. And I think that's kind of one of his charms as a player, is that you never know how a fight is going to go until it's relatively over. Alright, so they do have their mag field accelerator. They're going to just try and trade out with the Stalkers. Never a good sign. The Blink just more than enough to kind of clean this up. And BYUN overstayed his welcome quite heavily, but that did buy him a lot of time to kind of start getting his tech back up at home. He's got the 3 Raxes. He can go up to a 3rd CC any day now, and he's going to get all his upgrades in a very timely fashion. He is essentially setting up for a big siege tank push here. And as I say that, he is just going to build a reactor, so more like a Widowmine push. So on ASTREA's side, he is just going to be going very heavy into gateway production. It does look like he is going to be staying on a relatively heavy gateway style. We don't see the Robo facility coming on up anytime soon. So yeah, he's just going to try and overpower BYUN before his production gets too strong. You see, a 3-base Terran, I think if you guys remember, Husky back in the day used to call it the War Machine Terran because the level of unit production is just at its relative peak compared to what you can be making as the Protoss player. So now BYUN going to be moving out on the map with a very committed push once again. We have the ASTREA hit squad. They're ready to try and get a couple of pickoffs here and there, but you have to be careful not to lose too many stalkers or else you're in a world of pain. So far so good, however. Fighting in front of the acceleration zone is going to get one of the medevacs and a couple of marauders as well. And yeah, that's just going to force BYUN to go home. He doesn't want to fight when it's not on his terms. Zealots are going to catch this, but they're not in a high enough number to deal with it. We do have the rest of ASTREA's army joining up. It's a relatively even army count, but the Zealots and their charge are just doing wonders to kind of clean this up. Even the Widow Mines going to be able to take those down, but the reinforcements from the backfield is going to be more than enough, and BYUN will have to retreat. Just going to be going for a little bit of a drop play right now as well. Not going to get any SCVs this time, but that does put the fear of ire in to BYUN. So he's got to be very careful with his move outs from now on. Oh, that's always funny. All right. So ASTREA starting to fall pretty heavily behind in terms of that army account. Luckily for him, he is going up to Colossus production. So as soon as he gets a couple of those, he's going to be a little bit safer. Although now he's going to get chased down. A lot of his Zealots are away from the main army. So they're not going to be able to be there to buffer. Misses the force field as well, so there is a little avenue of escape for these Marauders, I believe. But the Stalkers are just going to trade as efficiently as possible. The Liberator's going to try and siege up, but 7 workers have already fallen on that side. BYUN diving right on top of the third. Has to be careful for the additional Zealot run-bys, or the Zealot warp-ins, but there is still so much bio, and now the Colossus. Done and donezo. He did take a little bit of a sting on the other side, but he is giving back as much as he's taken right now. Probes are pulled for the defense, and yeah, I think the Stalkers right now just need to fire down the medevacs. That is the one thing keeping this push alive, but that is not going to be enough. As the parade push moves across the map, BYUN takes game number 7. So he will be moving up to match point. If he wins one more, he wins the series. So the question is, what is ASTREA gonna pick for his last potential, I must say, last stand? These aren't replays. We don't know how this ends. Looks like he's kind of biding his time, thinking it over, and this is the thinking man's game right now. Do you go for a shorter map so that you can kind of get that cheddar in, or do you want to play a larger one and try and go for that late game situation where you feel a little bit more comfortable? The problem is BYUN hasn't been letting him get to that point in the past couple of games. It has been a real doozy for him. Please, please, I want to see an ace match. Don't we all? I don't think I've cast a. I don't think I've cast a. What do you call this series? I've only done like 100 of them. Alpha Pro series that hasn't gone to an ace match. Now that might just be my poor memory, but we usually do have a good selection of players, and we know kind of how to get the best series out of these guys as well. I'm not saying it's scripted at all, because by the way, it's not. But yeah, we just get some really equally skilled players going up against each other. BYUN won the previous one. But he still has to fight for his right to party here on the NA server. Spawning. Down here in the top position. He is ASTREA. Send him your love, send him your energy, because he is going up against this guy. Down here in the bottom, it's BYUN. So for now, looks like BYUN is going to be moving out on the map. This isn't really a scouting probe, or SCV rather. I think this is something a little cheekier. So ladies and gentlemen, someone in the chat said earlier that they don't see NG blocks anymore. Guess what? You're about to see one now. BYUN gonna block off the natural for the time being, force these additional probes to come down to defend this. And from here, he is just gonna get out of there with that SCV. Now, keep in mind, this is a little bit of a double-edged spear here, sometimes for a Terran player. Because sometimes when a Protoss player sees, oh, you're not gonna let me expand? Okay. Well, I'm not gonna let you live in this game. And they go for a much more aggressive Blink build. They hit you with Oracle Adept, which can be pretty potent as before production ramps up. There's just a lot of things that you can do to kind of ruin a Terran player's day in that regard when they do cheeky shenanigans like that. But yeah, once again, BYUN is going for not only a safe build, but a well-rehearsed build. The Hellions, very, very good, and this time he is going to mix it up just a little bit more. Get the starport in and just drop them straight into the main base, and hope ASTREA doesn't have the micro to deal with it. This is the part that we can see just these huge roasty toasty Protoss. Or it could fail spectacularly. depending on how ASTREA reacts. All right, the Hellions going to be moving on in. They're going to kind of ply their trade at the front, but unfortunately, ASTREA not really paying attention there. He does pull the Adepts away. Luckily, though, he does manage to get the wall up, but this is all a feint, meaning that he doesn't really want to try and get in here because he does have the medevac, which went back home? Really? Okay. So yeah, really good play there by ASTREA. He just made sure that he got the wall down. That was a really knee-jerk reaction. But it did save him there. The Stalker actually out of the way, so it does force in another defensive warp in here. BYUN trying to get in, but this is really just another nuisance for ASTREA to deal with, as BYUN just kind of cycling around like a shark. Now, finding a position down here by the third. Widowmine does burrow, gets the Adept. And although he is forced to lift up here, the Hellions still trying to find their way in. I gotta applaud BYUN. He's still trying to get the damage done. Yeah, I think he did see that. Like the Hellions, they get cleaned up right there. Blink is complete. Charge is on the way. He's going for double forge. Now, I think it was Oxide. Remember, this was one of his downfalls. He tried to go for the double upgrades, and it cost him dearly when BYUN decided to move across the map. This time, though, he's going to try and put BYUN not just in a world of hurt here, but he's going to do a bit of a soft contain with this off the back. Unfortunately, though, he takes a huge connection right there, so he knows that there is danger on every corner. Painful, painful pickoffs right there. Even going to get the recall with a good majority of them, so already doing their job quite stupendously. I see the laughs in the chat. Yeah, that was pretty funny and also very painful if you're a Terran player. I think the stim snipe is the one biggest rage-inducing thing that you can have, especially when you're gearing up for what looks to be a very committed push. We've got 3 siege tanks, a ton of Marines here. And, I mean, you do have a ton of Zealots with charge, so it's going to be a lot harder to kind of find that room to breathe. All right. So BYUN not actually going to be moving out with this. He was kind of just poking outside to see if there was anything coming across. We do see that robotics bay going to be completed here, so we should be seeing the transition into Colossus, but he is kind of stuck with Pure Gateway for the meantime. Zilla going to be finding its way in, sees the Widow Mines, doesn't really see too much else. So, yeah, from here, I think ASTREA is just doing a good job of blocking the attack routes that BYUN can do. He's not really committed to stopping BYUN on them. It's just to kind of slow him down if he does decide to move out. Yeah, just look at this beautiful vision.
We embrace the glory of battle.
ASTREA sees pretty much everything out here, and I think he just canceled that, actually. Yeah, we did see a Dark Shrine, but he canceled it in favor of the Templar Archives. Now, what the Templar Archives is going to allow him to do, if he so chooses, something we actually haven't seen in this series, go up to Storm Tech. If BYUN remains heavy in the Marine count, then that's going to be a pretty good cause here. Just act natural. He doesn't know. But yeah, now BYUN finally going to be on the move out here right underneath the Observer. This is going to be the signal that ASTREA was looking for. He's going to attack from the high ground. Cuts off a good chunk of BYUN's army. BYUN still has the army supply advantage here just by a fraction. But we do see the reinforcements getting completely cut off by the Zealots coming on in. Looks like the Widowmine got another decent connection here. The minefield still in effect. Gets the Observer with the residual damage, with the splash. Now BYUN finally going to be making his way across. He needs to set up the minefield in an optimal position. Here we go, the first couple of shots, but BYUN runs his forces right into the Zealots. They're not really in a position to deal with it. The Archon does get morphed. ASTREA going to cut off the retreat, but that does mean that BYUN has full range to move his forces into the main base if he so just chooses. He's just going to pick up and do exactly that, but losing a full medevac. Oh my goodness. Things are going from bad to worse here, but the funny thing is both sides are actually still pretty relatively even in most counts. Even take a look at that army supply, worker supply. So no one's really super far ahead, although ASTREA is going to try and build himself a lead by moving out on the map like this. Oh no, the Colossus actually recalling right on top of the army, so they will get one taken down, but this is just a feint for BYUN to be moving into the fort. The Zealots are in position here, but there is a Widowmine minefield off the back. A couple of Archons coming in for the flank, forcing BYUN to lift up and get on out of there, but we still have these small little whack-a-mole drops, essentially, for BYUN. Now it's ASTREA's turn. He feels like he does have the army that he can move across the map with, knowing that BYUN has a good majority of his forces kind of in random locations. They're not really in the same place, but he's gonna have a hard fight to get up the ramp. BYUN just kind of kiting him back into the Widow Mines. huge connections going off as well. And there you go. BYUN finally getting the probe kills that he was looking for. He does lose his third base though, or fourth rather, in the process. Now BYUN is almost maxed out. No recall is available, keep in mind, so the army is going to have to walk home if he wants to make it. But this fight is very scrappy, but ASTREA starting to fall behind. Looks like the SCVs are joining the fight as well. The Zealots really tanky. They're really doing a good job of kind of keeping BYUN's attention away. He might lose the medevacs here. And you know, now, BYUN still up very heavily in terms of that supply. Taking a look at the base count, it's currently 5 to 4. The Mule's doing a really good job of kind of keeping that income flowing for BYUN, even just taking a look at that advantage. And now I'm really worried for ASTREA. He does still have a lot of AoE in this army, a lot of DPS, splash damage with the Archons. And he does have the upgrades to go along with it. But now we have EMPs thrown into the mix. BYUN is one of those players who does kind of skip Vikings some of the time, because it's just easier to go for these ghosts and then pump heavy Marauder production to deal with the Colossus and such. But here we go. He's just going to try and dive on top of this huge EMPs. Going to get a lot of the shields off of these Archons. Not really able to close it, though. All the reinforcements going to be back at home defending the Zealots as well. So I feel like at this point, if BYUN went for one big fight, rather than keeping his army as segmented as it is, he would win the game. I digress, though, because he's going to get cleaned up once again. The reinforcements going to make the retreat, not a rout. And here we go, BYUN just setting up for another one. We do have the Zealot run by, kind of making sure that BYUN doesn't dive on this just yet either. Wouldn't mind Arvin try and defend as much as possible, but here we go. Disruptors getting a massive connection right there. And that really has to hurt, because that took a lot of wind out of the sail, killed a lot of ghosts. 2 ghosts. And now that is the angle that ASTREA was looking for. He's going to try and just dive on top of BYUN's bases here, I'd imagine. After killing 17 SCVs, BYUN doesn't really have a huge choice. He has to commit. Colossus, though, do recall right on top of the army, so one of them will fall relatively quickly. The Zealot's going to be coming back, cutting off the retreat. If he can get the Colossus and pick up and get out of here, I think he'll be okay. But the supply for both sides has plummeted once again. And since he did kind of reset the high-tier army count, there's only a couple of Archons left. The Ghosts, with their EMP, is more than enough to help out with that. And there you go. Now the Archons are pretty much paperweights. And ASTREA gonna fight the good fight here, but he is gonna be forced back. The remaining Stalkers not with the army. It's all gonna come down to these Disruptors. Gonna graze the army so far. pretty decent, but ASTREA still only down on 131 supply, and that's just with the Zealot Warpins. Which, by the way, he's trying to use for run-bys. So they're not going to be with the main army. And they're also going to get cut off by BYUN. The Stalkers on the other side of the map going to clean up BYUN's 5th once again. He just can't get that location. Disruptors, great split's going to mitigate the damage from them as he kills off the base and is going to be looking to close this one out. I don't think there's a lot that I really don't think that there's a lot that ASTREA can do. He kind of just has to buy himself a lot of time. But even that disruptor ball, as I say that, a huge connection finally going down on this army. But again, ASTREA down below 100 supply. He's lost an additional 22 workers. BYUN not really doing too well on the mining front himself, but he still has plenty of mules to saturate his bases. And I'm not trying to dissuade ASTREA. He still has the disruptors. They're a very good comeback mechanic. But against what BYUN is cooking, I don't know if it's going to be enough. The armies going to meet. Once again, good disruptor ball to start things off. The camera. And yeah, BYUN just kind of shaving away at the Protoss army right now. He's going to get another base kill. Clean up the probes. We do have the Liberator as well. That's just going to force the defensive warp in, which is not going to be with the army. I feel like BYUN really does want to close this out. He wants to finish the game. He's just unable to because of the disruptors. ASTREA, though, is playing his heart out. He's trying to find the additional base, but it's on the other side, and I think that's actually the lifted up main. Neither side really able to effectively take these bases, but here we go, trying to get on top of the disruptors. Gets one of them without a fire. At the end of the day, that's a very narrow choke point for these disruptors to fire through. Shaves off a little bit more of the army as BYUN going to be caught over here. But now the disruptors are gone, and that was the big play for ASTREA. He only has gateway units left, and that one Archon has fallen. GG is called. BYUN closes it out. He takes the series, and congratulations.